Franchise Secrets, Erik Van Horn.
If you're not a part of the Franchise Secrets Facebook group, what are you waiting for? It's franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. I cannot believe how valuable this group turned out to be. When someone asks a question, the feedback is honest, authentic, very helpful, and it's from multiple perspectives. If you're not sure that you're getting the most accurate information about franchising, then check out the largest, most helpful Facebook group in all of franchising. Whether you're a Z, a Zor, a buyer, or investor, join our free Facebook group at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. Welcome to the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Erik Van Horn here today with a solo episode. And I'm going to be talking about the 3 steps to remove yourself from the business. I've talked in the past about the reasons to remove yourself from the business, but I'm going to talk about how to do that. There's really 3 kind of ways to do that, and they stack on top of each other. And this is how I've removed myself from the business. You probably have your own ways or have heard of different ways, and that's fine. I'm just going to share with you what I've done to get myself out of the businesses that I found myself too involved with. But before I get into the 3 steps, there's a mindset change that I had to have, and I've seen others need to have it. So when you're thinking about new hires or key hires, not just any hire, but your key hires, stop thinking about it from an expense standpoint. I'm going to pay this much. It's going to cost me this much, to an investment. So if you switch your mentality from this is an expense to this is an investment, it really changes the way that you view things. It changes your paradigm with it, or at least it did with me. That was one of the key things that we did when we hired somebody at Solo Salons to do the things that all 4 of us owners were doing. And we got together and we're like, what is it worth to hire this person? Instead of what is it going to cost me, we said, what is it worth? And we each looked around each other and we're like, would you pay an extra $25,000 to $35,000 now to not have to do the things that you're actually doing in the business? And it was like, yes, we all said yes without a doubt. And so that's kind of how we came up with it. It was easy for us to hire a 6-figure person to take away all the things that we were doing. So a mindset from expense to investment for key hires. So you're hiring for what they're worth, or what it's worth it for you not to do it. So sometimes we think, what's it worth to hire this person? Sometimes like it was worth hiring the director of operations because it was worth me not doing certain things. So that's another kind of paradigm that we had, because we didn't want to do the things. And so I'd rather pay someone to do these things that I don't want to do anymore. And so that made a ton of sense to me at the time. So you hire to take things off of your plate that you hate, or they're a drag on you. So think about that. You want to hire this key person to take the things off of your plate that you hate, or are dragging you down, or making you dread the business, or making you not want to engage in the business and not want to work on the things that you actually are good at in the business. So that's another thing from a mindset standpoint. And the other thing too, a lot of us think we're so good at the thing that we're doing in the business that there's nobody better. Now that may or may not be true, but think about hiring people that are better than you at the things that you're currently doing now. Like, what are the things that you're doing now, if you were to write them out, that you think you could hire someone that is actually better at doing that? And that's a really no-brainer. If you can hire people to do those things, what's harder, but still good to do, if you could hire somebody that's an 8 out of 10. Like if you're a 10 out of 10 on the thing that you do that you're really good at, but you hire somebody that's an 8 out of 10, that they can do it and get those results, and you don't have to do that anymore. So you can focus on the things that you're a 10 out of 10 at, and are high revenue producing or value creating activities that you do. So hire people that are better than you, and then hire people to do the things that are currently on your plate that you're delaying. There are things that were on my plate in the last 12 months that were getting delayed because I just didn't want to do them, and I just kept delaying it until I hired someone to be able to do those things. So I hired them to be productive at the things that I just was not productive at. So let's get into the 3 steps to remove yourself from the business. Number 1, hire a virtual assistant or an executive assistant. I just came off a show or in a mastermind with Cameron Harold, and he was on the podcast with this Franchise Story podcast long time ago. And one of the things that he said to me was, if you don't have an assistant, you are one. And you've probably heard me say that before, but I was one at the time. I didn't have an assistant. And so that was something that changed. And at times I've had an assistant, haven't had one, and I don't think I'll ever live without one now. But you can hire a virtual assistant, and maybe that's the best place to start. Maybe hire somebody to do the things for you so you don't have to do some of these tasks that are really just tasks. Pull out a piece of paper, write down all the things that you do every day. And on those, like, are you the only one that can do them, or can you pass that off to somebody else to do? And what kind of expertise does that person need to know to be able to do the thing that you shouldn't be doing anymore? So it could be a virtual assistant. What I did is I hired an executive assistant, somebody that is paid much more than a virtual assistant, but I know I can hand them something and say, please do this and figure it out. And that's what they can do. So that's Stacy. Caleb can send Stacy an email. I can send Stacy an email and say, hey, can you please do this thing? And she will figure it out or respond back to me like, here's what I'm planning to do. I'm not too sure if I should do this or if there's a better way to do it. In other words, if your executive assistant's not confident in it, they'll respond back to you and let them know to get your feedback. And then you can just give them feedback, and then they do it. And then the next time that they do something, you give them a task to do or a thing to do, they know how your brain works, and you just start doing less and less in the business. And it's fantastic. Like, the energy level that you get when you have people doing these things that you hate doing is amazing. So step number 1, if you don't have an assistant, you need to get an assistant. Like, that is baby step number 1. And just because you don't have one doesn't mean like you're a bad business owner by any means. It means you've been hustling and you've been making it work, and you might be in expansion mode or whatever, but slow down, hire an assistant, hire an executive assistant, because they can think and they can do the things, and then empower them to do it. And SOPs are probably a great way to help them be effective at their job. A standard operating procedure, just Google it and just start. And it's just, an SOP might be a work in progress too. So if you have an SOP on how to book somebody for a podcast, just get it started with 3 steps. Let them come back to you as they get hung up on what to do next. And that's how you create an SOP that becomes a really good, robust SOP. You just got to start. So just do me a favor, hire an assistant if you don't have one, and you'll start doing more effective, high value work in your business as a result of that. So step number 2, in removing yourself from the business, is hire a manager. Hire an ops manager, a director of operations, a chief operating officer, whatever it is, hire them. And this is different than an executive assistant. So sometimes you might hire that executive assistant, and then they might become an ops manager. More than likely, you will hire a manager. And Cameron talked about this on the mastermind the other day. Like, don't give out titles. If you're hiring an ops manager, don't call them a chief operating officer. Like, reserve that. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. And if you don't know why you shouldn't do that, join the mastermind and learn from masters like Cameron Harold, who just spent a lot of time with us on this type of thing. But hire a manager to be able to manage the business, manage employees, manage the operations, manage the things that you don't want to manage, the day-to-day of the business, so it takes it off of your plate. Now, I use Sola as an example because probably the best example, since there were partners and we all had our strengths, but we also had our weaknesses, and we were forced to hire this manager because we didn't want to, we needed a higher level person. And so this is one of the businesses that I had a higher level person. So, we weren't perfect at first. We made mistakes. We had somebody that had industry experience, but they were a disaster. The industry experience was not what we needed. We didn't need a salon experienced person to be running solo salon studios. Even though it made sense on paper, it did not make sense once you really start to unpack what the business really was about, which was a landlord. We were landlords. We weren't managing stylist or estheticians. Then we had somebody else that came on board, and we thought, oh, they're going to be great. And they ended up being a disaster as well. And it's not that they were a disaster. They were not good in that role because we put the wrong person in the wrong role. They would have been good at managing a hair salon, and the other one would have been good at managing another business, but they were not the right fit for the role that we needed them for, because we didn't know the role at first. So we took a step back and we thought we need to hire a director of operations, a DOO, a director of operations. So we spent a lot of time understanding who it is that we needed. We talked to other franchisees, like who is good in this role? Because we were quickly becoming one of the largest franchisees that was hiring somebody like this. And so we started to reach out, and we had, I think, 3 to 4 face-to-face dinner interviews where they got all the way through the hiring process. We had like team dinners, and we were left with 2 people that we really had to choose from, and we ended up choosing the one. And he became an amazing district operational manager. We empowered him. He thrived in that role. He took an ownership mentality, and he ended up taking everything off of our plates to the point where we were kind of handcuffed in a bad way, because if he left, we were in trouble. Fortunately, the culture that we had and the kind of person that he was and the kind of people that we were as owners, he wasn't going to leave us high and dry, and we weren't going to do anything to negatively hurt him. So when it all came down, he was doing the banking, the site selection, the lease negotiation, dealing with the attorneys, dealing with the franchisor. He dealt with everything. So when I say we were spending an hour a week on that business, us as business partners in that business with 12 locations, we were meeting once a week, and we were getting reports from him, watching the financials and watching the goals, and making sure we were on track or off track. And we were on track in so many ways in that business that we ultimately sold to private equity. But that is step number 2, is hire that district operational manager, ops manager, COO, whatever you want to do, and however generous you are with titles. Don't be too generous though. All right. Number 3, let's say we didn't have that district operational. We had that district operational manager and we weren't selling. We didn't sell that business. The next step is to hire your replacement. Hire a replacement to do the things that you're doing. And so what I would have done if we would have kept that business is, and this is where the talk was going, let's have him come in as a partner, or let's give him some golden handcuffs so he wouldn't want to leave. We probably would have upped him to COO at that point, given him some equity, given him higher salary, and given him a way to grow with the company. And then we would have definitely been in that more board of director, board of advisor seat as the owners. And he would have been, not only had that owner mentality, but he would have actually been an owner. We would have been in that advisory role. We would be there to give direction to the company, to talk about when we keep it or when we sell it, or how do we expand, and all of those types of conversations. Now, let's say we had a district operational manager. We were still somewhat active in the business, or I was active in a business with a district operational manager, and I needed to get out of that business. I would probably promote that person, or let's say they were just a manager. They weren't director of operations type person. I would go find that person that could be that COO type person. Wouldn't give them that title right away, but let's say they could. You hire them and you make sure that they're good at the things that you're not good at. And that way you can be sitting on that board of advisor role. And if they can run the company, because you know what the company needs at this point, you know what kind of leadership that person needs to be able to give the company or your franchise or the brand to be able to excel. So you hire that replacement, they replace you and the things that you're doing in that business, so you are on the board of advisors. So those are the three things. It starts with hiring an assistant, a virtual assistant or an executive assistant. If you want to manage virtual assistants, get a virtual assistant. If you are like me and you want an assistant that can doesn't have to be told exactly what to do every step of the way, you hire an executive assistant. Then you hire an ops manager or a director of operations. And then you hire your replacement, a higher level person than an ops manager. And for us, it could have been that district operational manager that was with us at Solip, because he could have been that replacement for us. And those are the 3 steps to remove yourself from the business. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Franchise Secrets Podcast. Whether you're watching or listening, please make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to whatever channel you're listening on. If you want my help with anything from buying a franchise to franchising your business, please visit franchisesecrets.com.